All right, Nick, it's that time of year again. The NFL Combine is right around the corner. It's going to be starting up these stats, the 40s, bench press. We're going to see the throwing. Everything is going to be coming at us very, very quickly, and we're going to have a lot to talk about here. But, right before the Combine, all the coaches get together. People are interviewing. There's a lot of interesting statements being made, and none other than Seattle Seahawks head coach Pete Carroll was at the Combine, and he had some very interesting statements regarding the future of the Seahawks.
Yeah, Mice. But before we get into that story, Seahawks fans, I want to hear from you in the comment section below. Look, going into the offseason, everyone knows that every team goes through this. You're going to make a lot of moves, some additions, some subtractions, some guys you cut, some guys you trade, some guys you sign. Let us know in the comment section below what current Seattle Seahawks you feel is weighing this roster down. What one player you think the Seahawks need to get rid of, a little addition by subtraction, if you will. And let us know who that guy is in the comment section below. All right, Miles, what you got? What's the latest out of Seattle?
Yeah, Nick, not necessarily addition by subtraction, but a point of contention on this roster is the quarterback position. Geno Smith was very good last year, but that means he's looking for a new contract, a much bigger contract, and whether he leaves the Seattle Seahawks to get a payday with another team or Seattle's able to nail him down with another contract, that is what is going on. That is the hot topic when they talk about it. And at the Combine, Pete Carroll has some very interesting statements. And I really like what he said here, Nick, because he said whether they do or they don't sign Geno Smith, the Seahawks are deeply involved in the 2023 draft QB prospects. And they say they may take one of these guys very high in the draft, whether they sign Geno Smith back or not. They feel like there's a few guys in here that could maybe be the quarterback of the future for the Seattle Seahawks. And there's a couple other things that he brought up that I thought were really interesting, Nick. But before I get into those, I'm curious to know what you think about this. What do you think about Seattle's statements on the quarterback position?
So this is just a classic pre-draft smokescreen. It's really smart by Pete Carroll because if you look at the entire draft order right now, if you look who's in front of the Seattle Seahawks, you have the Texans at 2 and the Colts at 4. They're looking at quarterback. And then after them, you've got a number of guys potentially looking quarterback. You got the Lions, maybe. You got the Raiders, definitely. Falcons, maybe. Panthers, definitely. Titans, potentially. Then you have the Jets. You go down to like the Washington Commanders, maybe the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, potentially other teams trading up to get to that spot. And that's exactly what I think, in my opinion, here is what Pete Carroll's trying to do. And notice how he said whether we sign Geno Smith or not, because I think the reality is they're going to sign Geno Smith. There were earlier reports, I think a few weeks ago, that Smith and the GM were on good pay. Smith's agent and the GM were working through some stuff. They're heading in the right direction. I think they're going to sign Geno Smith. I would be very surprised if Geno Smith is not a Seattle Seahawk in 2023. But Pete Carroll doesn't want to give away all his leverage because he understands that anyone who wants to leapfrog, maybe the Raiders most likely at 7, to get the third best quarterback in the draft at that point, or maybe the fourth best, depending on whatever trades happen in front of the number 5 overall pick. He knows that the Seattle Seahawks are most likely to trade back. And everyone knows, and the Seahawks know this as well, they're really good at evaluating and drafting players later in the draft. Of course, Tyreek Woolen comes to mind last year. Abraham Lucas, Kenneth Walker was a 2nd-round pick. I think Bo Melton, who was a 7th-round guy himself, is potentially going to be a really nice player. So when you look at a lot of the things that Seahawks do well, they do well when they have a lot of picks, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th round. So the ways you get that is by trading back. And I think that's all Pete Carroll is trying to do here. I think he wants to pent up some demand and make people think, whoa, if the Seahawks get a quarterback, we may need a leap in front. If they're interested, we need to make a move here. And I think that's all Pete Carroll's trying to do, just pent up a little demand for his position in the draft. Because I think Geno Smith is their guy. I don't think they're moving off Geno Smith.
I would agree with you there, Nick, especially when the next comment from Pete Carroll came out. And it was talking about how highly he valued a multi-sport athlete background in the quarterback position. And that's why I think it was very interesting because he said in his own words, it's one of the first things that he's interested in when looking at the quarterback position. You want to know on the basketball court, were you a slasher? Were you an assist guy? On the baseball diamond, did you play center field? Were you able to control everything out there? Is very vitally important to him. And I see guys like Bryce Young. In high school, Bryce Young was kind of just a football guy. He wasn't really necessarily tearing it up anywhere else there. Anthony Richardson, really big time athlete. But, he's known more for his football. It's not like the Russell Wilsons where these guys, the Kyler Murray, yeah. Guys that are like potentially getting drafted by MLB teams. It's not like the Antonio Gates, or the Jimmy Grahams of the world, where everyone talks about, oh, do you know that Jimmy Graham, Antonio Gates used to play basketball in high school, college, all those kind of things. I don't see the crazy dual sport athletes in this quarterback class. So I don't see anyone because they're gonna at the position they're at, they're gonna have to get up a lot to potentially move up to get into the range of one of these high level quarterback prospects. So I do agree with you. I think they're gonna re-sign Geno Smith, and I don't necessarily think they're really targeting someone. I think it's kind of just maybe getting other people to move up so their guys will fall to them.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where his word choice was really important because if he would have just said, "Hey, we're looking at the quarterback position," then when they sign Geno Smith, like I think they will in 2 weeks, every executive, every other rival GM will be like, "Okay, they're no longer looking at the quarterback position because they just signed Geno Smith." Because he said though that like whether we bring back Geno Smith or not, we're still looking at the quarterback position. He's just setting the stage that say, "Hey, no matter what happens, we may draft a quarterback at number 5, even though everyone knows that's most likely not going to happen." But Geno Smith is a little older, right? A lot of these GMs get kind of paranoid. They get desperate, especially if, if the owner's kind of like, "Hey, we need to make some big moves here. We need to go get our guy." And you could see a potentially Las Vegas Raiders or a Carolina Panthers getting really concerned and maybe calling up Seattle and giving them, a haul to move up to number 5 just to make sure they can get their preferred quarterback. And I think that's the real smart move here by the Seattle Seahawks and Pete Carroll, because that's all you need to do in the offseason is just plant a little seed of doubt in your rival GMs and rival teams, because you give these guys a few months, right? Remember, the draft is in late April, right? We're still 2 months away from the draft. You start playing a seed in their mind now that maybe the Seahawks go after a quarterback. Maybe they're taking a guy at 5 and get them 2 months of paranoia to set in and things like that. I guarantee you the Seahawks will be in strong position to get a big haul for that number 5 pick, most likely. I think this is a really smart move by Pete Carroll.